Hail, hail, Tommy Robinson's in jail again. He's maintained the good old English custom of going away for the bank holiday for 13 months in Her Majesty's prison. What is it Tommy famously always says? If you don't like our laws, get out of our country. Well, Tommy, we're going to play what is one of the all-time radio classics with 1 million hits on YouTube. My encounter with Stephen Yaxley Lennon, although he has other aliases available, on TalkSport in 2010. Promise you, you'll like it. Harvey Weinstein's in a bit of soapy bubble, true. Saw him there with his handcuffs on. What a day it's been. It is the birthday of Kylie Minogue. She's 50. It's the birthday of Paul Weller. He's 60. And it was yesterday the birthday of the great Bob Dylan, who's 77. And we'll be reflecting all three of these birthdays in the course of the show this evening. Now, on Channel 4 News over the last couple of nights, something truly remarkable has happened. The truth about Syria is finally being told. After all these years of war propaganda and all these years in which successive British ministers and administrations have poured money, men and materiel into the ISIS Al-Qaeda coalition, which enslaved, crucified, beheaded and terrorized all of the ordinary Syrians under their jackboot. Finally, Alex Thompson, one of the only men in England entitled to call himself a journalist, has got his cameras on the ground in Ghouta. And guess what the people are telling him? They're telling them that their life has been utter hell, literal hell, for 6 years under the jackboot of the people we have been supporting. I tell you something, and I ask you metaphorically to write it down and tell your children. The day will come, and not far distant, when we will look back on our role in Syria and conclude that this is the worst thing that we have ever done. And dear listeners, we've done some terrible things. All around the world we have done some terrible things, but we have never done anything worse than becoming the Air Force, the armorer, the treasurer of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the alphabet soup that has so soaked the beautiful, multicultural, multi-faith, Levantine, Mediterranean land of Syria. And Alex Thompson's reports on Channel 4 News will not be the last. And soon, just like with Iraq, it'll be rarer than hen's teeth to find anyone who will admit to having played the role that this day you and I know that they have played. Governments, I understand. The British government has been supporting Islamist fanatics all around the world for well over half a century, since the 1950s in Egypt against President Nasser. I expect that from a political class soaked in blood and utterly bereft of any morals at all. What I can never accept, will never forgive, and will prosecute with every breath I have left, is the journalistic class that lied on a militarized scale year after year after year, and worse than lying, turned their venomous attack upon those who were telling the truth that Alex Thompson and Channel 4 News have belatedly begun to tell. One of those is Eva Bartlett, and she'll be on the show in the first hour. She's an independent writer on Syria who knows what she's talking about because she's in Syria, has spent some of the most dangerous days of anybody's life as a woman journalist in Syria. Nobody wanted to know the truth she was telling, but they will now, Eva. You'll probably get a Nobel Prize at the end of it. As I said, we're going to be playing the video of my classic encounter with Tommy Robinson. I promise you, you'll be holding your sides laughing. And we'll be talking also about the Grenfell anniversary. So many grim anniversaries coming up at the same time. The grim anniversary of the Manchester Arena atrocity, when one of our intelligence assets murdered little children and their mothers and their fathers and anyone that they could murder. And if they could have murdered 262,600, he would have murdered them. I'm forced to say he because there's no official acknowledgement that there's a they, even though it is obvious that this punk, this disgusting punk, didn't make that bomb himself, didn't plan this operation entirely alone, didn't finance this operation entirely alone. But we're not apparently looking for his accomplices, and if we are, the British public have not been told about it. There's no all points alert. There's no identikit pictures. There's no look out for him, and her. It's all gone quiet. Well, not for me, because I was less than a mile away when that atrocity took place, and the memory of it will never leave me. Neither will the memory of the fact that the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, the clue was in the name, Teresa, close brackets, the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, whose son carried out that act of mass murder upon children, were not only allowed to be in Britain, they were congregated in Manchester as a terrorist cell, and they were used by successive British governments for over 20 years as a terrorist cat's paw against the regime in Libya, even while we were kissing Gaddafi in the tent in the form of Prime Minister Tony Blair. Gordon Brown removed their control orders. Theresa May gave them back their passports, and the intelligence services answerable to Theresa May escorted them back and forth between Manchester and Libya, where they learned the deadly skills that killed all of our children. I make no apology for returning to that issue. Well, nobody else is, so I am forced never to let it go. And by a rather grim coincidence, I can still smell the Grenfell Tower from my front door. I have to look at it up close and personal every day. My youngest son goes to school with some of the survivors of the Grenfell Inferno. I look at it, I smell it, and I feel the pain of the survivors, the children and their parents, many of them still living in what are laughingly called hotels, a year after Theresa May said that they'd all be rehoused within a couple of weeks. I described it here on the first night as a crime, not a blunder, as a huge crime of manslaughter. I'm still waiting for the first arrests. I'm still waiting for the government to live up to their promise to replace inflammable cyanide-infused cladding from other high-rises that stand at risk of exactly the same fate. I'm still waiting for the survivors to be rehoused. I'm still waiting for the people who made the decisions that caused the deaths of all those scores of people and the scalding of hundreds more, if not in body, then in soul. We'll be marking the Grenfell anniversary with a very important correspondent who's been investigating it right from the start. And I'll have something to say about a Mr. Philip Cross also. It's the mother of all talk shows. It must therefore be talk radio.